Hey you peeps, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and it is time once again for my top 100 games. This is the 2015 edition. So these aren't my top 100 games of all time. These are the games that I enjoy the most right now, the games I would want to play the most if you asked me. So expect this to change from year to year, just like it has since last year. So as we go through this list, starting with number 100, going to 91 today, but we will go through every single bit of the list all the way up to number 1, putting out a couple of videos per week. As we go through the list, I will tell you where things are new to the list, where things have fallen from last year, and where they have even potentially moved up, as well as having comments, second opinions from the fine folks over at Board Game Geek, the other users, whose opinions are every bit as valid as mine, maybe. Okay, sure, they are. We'll say that. Let's be nice. Now, let's get to the list. Starting us off, my number 100 is Lost Legacy. Now, this fell 36 spots from number 64 last year, and that could just be because I played a lot of excellent fillers in the last year. But Lost Legacy is a really solid card game. It is the successor to Love Letter, both games being from the now famous Japanese designer Seiji Kanai. Lost Legacy has the same exact mechanisms of Love Letter, however, it adds an entire other phase to the end of the game that makes the game much more gamey. You are trying to eliminate the other players, but now you're also trying to find an item that is bouncing between players' hands called the Lost Legacy, and there are multiple decks that you can play as standalone or mixed together for Lost Legacy, and that, whatever the Lost Legacy is, might change from game to game. And some of the Lost Legacy decks are completely different than the others and how they play, and I think that's what I enjoy the most about it. It's just a solid game with some really great artwork, at least in the original Japanese edition. Not really keen on what AEG did with the artwork, but still, if that's the only way you can get the game, do check it out because it's a solid filler. That is Lost Legacy. For a second opinion, we have Philip Thomas from BGG, who says, better than Love Letter, in the same way that having your finger cut off is better than having your thumb cut off. 2 plays. Number 99 is new to the list this year. There's many new games on my list this year. This one is called Flick 'em Up. This is a game from Z-Man Games and their brand Pretzel Games, which is all about flicking discs, but specifically, thematically, you are cowboys in the Old West. There's different scenarios in the scenario book, which you never would have expected for a relatively light dexterity game that they put so much thought into the scenarios, but they did, and there's different ways to set up all these really nice wooden and heavy cardboard bits that represent the town that you're shooting out at, with bandits on one side, cowboys on the other. It's a team game, and you're flicking this little disc representing bullets at each other, trying to knock each other's over. There's an expansion that just came out that has horses, wooden horses, and ramps. I haven't played it yet, but it looks pretty cool. It's very silly fun, but it's also got some strategy to it, unlike most dexterity games, and I really enjoy it, and it's definitely, even though it's brand new, a worthy addition to the list. That is Flick 'em Up from Pretzel Games and Z-Man Games and Philosophia. For a second opinion, we have Soccer Star 001, who says, I have played hundreds of games. My common count on BGG sits at over 1,100. I've played these games thousands of times. My play count here is over 1,200. This is the only game in my play history that I quit without finishing. Number 98 is King of New York or King of Tokyo. Now, they're both essentially the same game, but King of New York is like a more advanced version with a lot of extra stuff added onto it. And I think I like King of New York better because it is a little more gamey, but really either one is fine. They can both find a spot in this part of the list. It's actually down 39 spots from number 59 last year, but that's only because I played it a ton, and I think it just kind of got burned out on it. But it's still a solid game. This is from Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering. It's a dice-chucking Yahtzee-style game. You are all giant monsters trying to destroy either Tokyo or New York, depending on which game you have. And you're rolling these dice trying to get different sets of either like claws or energy to buy power-up cards, things like that. New York adds the element of destroying buildings, which unfortunately might summon the army to take all of you out, which makes the game much faster and more visceral. There's other elements to that as well. But it's a solid, fun game. Definitely a gateway game no matter which version you use, but definitely King of Tokyo. A great game to get new people into the hobby, and just a great game all around. That is King of Tokyo or King of New York. Take your pick. That is my number 8, and that was my computer beeping. For a second opinion, we have James Manhattan, who says, what the hell? Why does this get good reviews? Everyone I respect says it's a great family game. It sucks. Maybe it's for dumb kids. Number 97 is Lost Legends, which is not to be confused with Lost Legacy. Sorry, they're in such close proximity, it's easy to get them confused, but they're very, very different games. This is actually down 44 spots from number 53, and I think that is primarily because this game has kind of been left to die by the publisher Queen Games. There hasn't been any major expansion for it, and it does really need an expansion to reach its true potential, but even as a standalone game, it's great. This is a card drafting game, Seven Wonder style, but with theme. You are adventurers going down into a dungeon, but not cooperatively. This is a competitive game. You're trying to get the most money, points, whatever it is, to by killing all these monsters and getting loot. And you actually use all this stuff to you use money that you gain to buy gear in between levels of the dungeon by drafting these cards and then paying for them and making yourself stronger. The game is incredibly unforgiving. I'm not going to deny that, but that's kind of the fun of it too. If you screw up in your draft and get the wrong gear or gear that you just can't use or not enough gear, you might die, but even if you die, you're not totally out of the game, and I've seen some comebacks too, so it's very exciting. I like the artwork, and I like the theme. Again, card drafting games, while I like them a lot, don't usually have theme. This one does, and I hope that Queen Games gives it another shot. That is Lost Legends from Queen. For our second opinion, we have Scamper from BGG, and he says, or she says, a broken mess, unless you like broken messes, as many a geek hath done. My number 96 is Shinobi Wata, which is a game that dreadfully few people have actually played or heard of. It's down 47 spots from number 49, and it's only because it's hard to get to the table. No one knows what to make of it. No one knows what it is. No one's heard of it before. But I really gravitated towards this game. It's two different games in one. First is the basic game, which is just a very simple set collection game. You're just playing cards, trying to get different sets of colored ninja with beautiful artwork. I love the artwork in this game from one of my favorite artists as well. It's either Nayade or Xavier Jeffrey Duran. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But it's wonderful artwork, and you're trying to get these different sets of ninjas and get points. But let's take that. There's some, screwing each other over. On its own, not that interesting. But the advanced game, which takes that game and then adds another level in between each round of that game, is very interesting. You take the points that you gain from a previous round, use those to get little ninja stars that you do with kind of a worker placement thing, putting them around this extra separate board that you put out, and gets you different bonus cards. There's a main boss that you need to defeat at the end, and you need to eliminate variables to determine which boss you're actually going to fight because it's hidden. So you use your ninja stars to look at the hidden cards, and it's really, really interesting, and I wish the game was getting more love, but I still enjoy it. It'll probably be in my collection for quite a while because, again, it kind of fell off the face of the earth, and I'm scared that it will never, ever show up again, but it's a great game. That is Shinobi Wata from Yellow Games. Factorial Light disagrees, however, and says, avoid this game. Set collection game with awful mechanic added on top of it. Would not play this game again. Number 95 is new to the list. I actually reviewed this game not too long ago. It is called Treasure Hunter, and this is also a Richard Garfield game. The guy has been on fire lately, post-Magic. This is another drafting game. Can you tell I like drafting quite a bit? But this one is all about, it is adventurers as well, just like with Lost Legends, but now it's sort of more lighthearted. You're just going through different levels of a dungeon, but now you're just trying to get different pieces of treasure. It's not so much about surviving the many, many monsters that are popping out at you. You just want to get these different treasures. But there's an interesting mechanism where if you play the highest strength, you're going to get the highest strength treasure. But if you play the lowest strength, you're going to get the lowest strength treasure, and everyone else gets nothing. But some of those treasures are kind of worthless. So sometimes you don't want to be the highest or the lowest, but you may be forced to. Sometimes you want to be in the middle, but things conspire against you. There's also extra phases of the game, like having to avoid goblins who steal from you Golden Axe style in the middle of the night. But you can use dogs, which is always a cool thing in a game, to chase them away. So there's a lot of cool somatic scrolls, things like that. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this. Very simple, definitely gateway style game, but also with great artwork. That is Treasure Hunter, also from Queen Games and from Richard Garfield. Julia's says, I honestly hated this game. In many ways, it boils down to luck and being willing to screw over the people you're playing with. I felt like I was being ganged up on by my siblings. It reminded me of playing Risk as a preteen, and I will only play again if I can actually flip the table. Yeah! There's quite a few new games in this section of the list. The next one is Timeline Challenge. Now, the base game of Timeline did not make it onto my list last year, but it might have if it had a little more game to it. And that is what Timeline Challenge does. If you're not familiar with the base game of Timeline, it's just a very simple family weight, almost educational game. It is educational, of just trying to put cards in order. Cards representing when things were invented, when famous people did famous things, and music scores, and there's all kinds of different sets that have different focuses to it. What Timeline Challenge does is takes that relatively simple game that might get very old after just a small amount of time and puts it into a trivia-style contest where you're all working against each other and you've got different types of challenges and you have like these cool wheels where you're locking in answers. It makes it into a game show version of Timeline, and I love it. I really do. I'm terrible at it. You can beat me anytime. Challenge me to a game if you just really want to beat me, but if you meet me at a con. But I still enjoy it greatly. That is Timeline Challenge from Asmodee. Really enjoy that one. And also, you can use all of your old Timeline cards. Let me stress that. Now, I couldn't find a review because Timeline Challenge is so new, a bad one, but for the original Timeline, Usagi-san says, boring, break the ice type of game. I'm not here to make friends, just play. My number 93 is also new to the list, and it is Arboretum. This is from Z-Man Games. It is a I would say that it's a filler type card game. It can go on a little bit long, but this is a very puzzly type of game, at least as far as the scoring goes, where you're trying to make a arboretum of trees, and in gameplay terms, you have these very beautiful looking trees, cards with artwork of trees on them and different types of trees representing different colors that you're trying to put in paths in front of you. And how you score those paths is very interesting. You're trying to have like a set length of trees all together, and you can build off of different paths, and it is brain bending in a lot of ways. It really made my brain hurt trying to think of the best way to set out my cards and to potentially win the game, but it was in a good way. Like, I really enjoyed the game. It's like a filler game up to the next level. It's like what you would introduce to someone who is familiar with traditional card games or games like, cribbage or bridge or things like that, who are used to puzzling out, games a little bit more difficult than spades, but you want to take them up to that next level. I think Arboretum is great, and it looks so beautiful. That is Arboretum from Z-Man Games. And Sasha Vukovic says, the worst game ever. Bunch of periods in between all those. Number 92 is new to my list, but it is definitely not new, and I think this will surprise a lot of people. My number 92 is Dominion. Now, I had kind of given up on Dominion. It was one of the games that I had originally played that got me back into modern board gaming. Not back into it, but into modern board gaming as we know it now. But I had played so many... that came out... When I got into board gaming, a lot of other deck builders had come out, including Ascension and Legendary, that I felt just completely replaced Dominion. I revisited the game when the latest expansion Adventures came out, and I realized, you know what? There is something to be said for a very solid, clean design. Yes, Dominion is essentially themeless, but it does what it does well. There's a reason why it is so popular, and why it started an entire genre, and that is because it is designed fantastically. And a lot of the different expansions that have come out for it, quite a few of which I have, including the newest one, Adventures, which is great, really take the game in interesting directions without changing too much of the game and making it too clunky and too much to add on. It is deck building in its purest form, and it works surprisingly well. And it's a great game to introduce new people to the hobby to. I mean, because some games like Legendary are just a little bit too complicated, and some people don't like superhero themes or fantasy themes, but everyone can at least appreciate a very neutral medieval theme, and that's what Dominion at least has, if you want to put a rosy spin on its themelessness. But still, solid game. That is Dominion, my number 2 for the first time, number 92 for the first time ever. Never number 2. But Phil Tree says, lots of theme, LOL. Last one for today, my number 91 is Zombie 15. This is actually on my list last year at number 84. It fell 7 spots, not a huge drop. I think this is about where I would have expected it to rest. It's a solid zombie game with a twist. This has a real-time element to it. You are playing a soundtrack which, you guessed it, lasts 15 minutes. And you and the other players need to work cooperatively as a bunch of kids who are the only living people in this town. All the adults have turned into zombies. You need to escape from this town and do different things depending on what the scenario tells you to do. They actually just came out with a solitary scenario I still need to try, which I'm actually quite eager to try. But it's really great because I feel like other real-time games like Escape just don't work for me because it's too frenetic. It's too, like, I don't even know if we're doing the rules right because everyone's rolling dice frantically. You've only got 5 minutes. It's just craziness. This one, while it is frantic and stressful with only 15 minutes and you need all of those minutes, it still feels more methodical. It still feels like I can take my turn and do everything I want to do on my turn, and it makes sense, and we're following the rules. Done. Your turn. Let's go. And you still have that excitement going on. I love the artwork and the visuals and the miniatures. It's a very well-produced game, and I had a lot of fun with it. That is Zombie 15 from Yellow Games, our last one for today, number 91. But Boba Gabe says, it really needed component streamlining. One of the game's big selling points is how quick it is to play, but it takes twice as long to set up. My wife and I love co-ops, but this one didn't work for us. That one wasn't funny, it was just sad. Sorry to end like that. But thank you so much for watching. Tune in later in the week. We are going to have number 90 to 81. And of course, we cannot help but have more comments from the PGG Peanut Gallery. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.